Hey there, everybody. My name's Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist. Welcome back to my channel. Those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. My name's Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first novel. And on my channel, we talk about the psychology behind the characters, the writing, the world, because that's how you make a more well rounded one. So today, this is the last video for now in my culture series. Like I've said before, there's lots of things about culture I probably didn't even touch on because it's a huge topic. But for the sake of this video, this will be the last one for now on how to world build a culture. And that is the history of your world. Okay, guys, so this one, I think this is a difficult one simply because history's complicated. It's difficult. You're going to get a different story depending on who you talk to. There's never just one side to it. And I think that is where a lot of writers kind of mess up, is that they create their history of their world. And in their mind, they say, okay, this is how, this war happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. They set up their timeline, say, this is how it happened. That's good. But how do your races and your cultures think it happened? Because that is a completely different scenario. Basically, when we talk about history, we always say that there's usually three sides to every story. There's what you think, what the other person thinks, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. I'm sure everybody's heard the phrase, history is written by the victors. It is very, very true. Because unless, actually no, not even in that case, even if you have primary sources, like for example, videotape, recordings, journals, everybody still interprets those in their own manner. And that is all influenced by how you are taught and what you believe up to this point. Let's see, what is a good example? Oh, I know. So, in America, we spend about, I'd say 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks on average, talking about the American Revolution, the war where we won our independence from Britain. I have had multiple friends from the UK inform me that it is a footnote in their history, which makes sense because for us, it was a major point. It was the start of our country. For them, it was the rebellion of some colonies. It doesn't mean that the war didn't still happen, but it means that there's going to be different emphasis on different things. That's one example. Another example is, remember, we are very good at not telling the truth. And when it comes to situations that are controversial or may cause some conflict, we're very good at ironing them over. We don't necessarily always tell the truth when we write down history. In fact, most of the time we don't. So that's why it's important to get insight from multiple sides when you're looking at history. Because, like I said, each side has their own interpretation. And the closest you're going to get to what actually happened is to look at both interpretations. Are you ever going to get the full 100% true story? Probably not. Honestly, probably not. But if we can get as close as we can to what actually happened, then we're better off. So, when it comes to your story, your world, you really honestly are coming up with multiple timelines. You, as the writer, obviously know exactly what happened. You know exactly what actually played out. But you also have to figure out what your people think happened and why. Like, let's see. What's a example. Oh, I'll use my work in progress. So I have the Natuba and I have the Natusa. They are two clans. They don't particularly like each other. So there was a conflict in the history of the world years ago where they split and basically went their separate ways. If you ask the Natusa what happened, they will say that the Natuba started the conflict by not being reasonable, that they wanted to pursue a more militaristic lifestyle, things like that. If you ask the Natuba what happened, they would say that the Natusa were being too soft, they weren't taking security threats seriously, things like that. You're going to get two different stories. And one thing that I think I tend to avoid in my stories, I never tell you outright who was right. Because in my mind, they were both right. They both had truth to their stories. They both had lies to their stories. And I think that is really what you need to consider when you're doing history, is what is the truth that the culture believes. And remember, lots of different things can influence this. So let's say that your culture has a war that happened in its past, and it was against races or creatures or whatnot that they don't have good relationships with. They're probably not going to have positive thoughts on what their role in that war was. Because unfortunately, that's how the mind works. When we have someone that we don't get along with, or someone that we believe is different or has different beliefs from us, we tend to, I don't want to say demonize because it's not quite that bad, but we definitely tend to have a more negative viewpoint of them, and that bleeds into our history interpretation. It just does, because psychologically, our brain looks for shortcuts. It looks for things that it can make simpler. So if we're learning about a conflict in history and we're trying to figure out what happened and it's against someone that we didn't like, brain says, oh, I don't like them because of the stories my parents have told me, because of the stories my teachers have told me, whatever. So that must mean that in this conflict they were to blame. Now, is it going to be that blunt and that straightforward in like history texts and stuff? Probably not. But it's still going to be there. There's going to be like little hints that, okay, well, maybe these people really weren't as up and up, or, things like that. We're very good at blaming each other. It's something, unfortunately, we are very, very good at. Now, when it comes to world building, though, I would advise against setting up your entire history of your world. Simply because I think that's a lot of work, and a lot of times it doesn't pay off entirely. But I do think it's important to have the basics down. So, determining where did your people come from? When did they first interact with each other? What are the major conflicts that happen in your world? What are the major achievements that happened in your world? I think a lot of times when we develop history for worlds, we focus on just the wars and the conflicts and the battles and things like that. Because usually in fantasy, that's the kind of thing that pops up. But I think it's also important to know, what were the great achievements? What were the interactions that worked? What were the interactions that led to alliances? Are there still alliances? Those are important to consider too, because history, unfortunately, the negative sticks out the most, I think. But the positive, there's still a lot of positive there. And if you can include that when you're doing your world building, I think it makes your world look, one, it makes it more fleshed out, more realistic. But I think it also gives it more of a positive spin. And it keeps each of your different races from being too stereotypical, I think. Because each race or culture has things they've done that are not good. Each one has things they've done that are great. It's all a mix. And if you can mix it up all the more when you're building your own world's history, then I think you're better off. I really think with history, that's the basis of it, because I think to go any more in depth, you'd almost have to be building a history with me, which, I mean, maybe in the future we can do that. It might be kind of fun. But for the bare basics, have a positive, have a negative elements in your world's timeline, determine how they first met each other, determine what actually happened, determine what each side thinks happened, and what are potential reasons why they think that. I think those are the bare basics of it that you might want to consider when you're world building. So thank you guys for chiming in for the history lesson, so to speak, on world building. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you have any comments or suggestions, leave them below. I always love to respond to them. And if you guys enjoy my content, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you don't ever miss when I upload. I'll upload every Thursday, every Sunday, and I will throw some bonus videos with you guys when I can. And until next time, I hope you guys have a good one.